A salary is the drug they give you when they want you to forget about your dreams.
Welcome to the Corporate Dropout Podcast. I'm your host, Alacia Citro. After a successful career in tech, suffering from burnout, stress, and anxiety, I walked away from a multiple six-figure career to chase my passions and purpose as a coach and entrepreneur. This show is going to inspire, equip, and empower you to do the same. Let's get it. Hello, friends. Today I'm interviewing Dr. Melissa Henault, fellow corporate dropout and founder of Burnout to All Out, which teaches the highly successful LinkedIn Method Academy. Melissa is also a top network marketing leader who has built to the top of not one, but two companies. Melissa was also my business coach earlier this year, and bringing things full circle, it was her episode on Getting Magnetic with Sandy and Wade that played a role in the plane story and me quitting my job. Melissa, thank you so much for being here and coming on the show.
Oh my gosh. So fun to see this all come to fruition. It's so exciting.
It's crazy, right? We started working together almost a year ago. And if you would have told me that less than a year later, I would be not working at Google anymore and interviewing you on my own podcast, I would have said, you're lying.
How cool is that? How cool. It's amazing what can happen in even 90 days, much less 360.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yep. If you just make it happen, you put your eyes on the vision and you go for it, sky's the limit.
Yep.
So something you shared with me before we started recording, you had basically shared that you have a new program inside of Burnout to All Out in addition to the LinkedIn Method Academy. Can you tell us about that really quick before we get going?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Like, you're a classic example, I think, where I have found that I attract a certain type of client who not only wants to generate leads and crush their social selling business, but they have higher aspirations as an entrepreneur to really build their own brands, build their own businesses. And I've had a lot of people come to me and that just very inspired that I was able to build a 7-figure business in 19 months that was my personal brand. And so we decided, you know what, like, let's launch a mastermind that legitimately teaches that, building personal brand and the back end operations of that. It looks all sexy and fun on social media, but most people don't understand the systems and process and structure that have to happen on the back end to actually make it happen. So we kind of threw it out there with our internal clients, and it was a huge hit. And we've got a great group running hard and launching all kinds of things, including podcasts and books and all the things. And so, yeah, it's been a really fun mastermind that we lifted off earlier this year, and we've been having a blast with it.
Oh, it sounds like something that I need to take because, I think it's great to build your brand inside of network marketing and all of that. But, your brand stays with you forever. So building 100%. That is crucial.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you here. So I wanted to start off with your professional background. Now, Sure. You have a really, really impressive resume. You're a doctor of pharmacy or PharmD. You left a super powerful career as a medical director to become an entrepreneur. Give us the high-level overview of that professional path prior to you becoming a corporate dropout.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it unfolds the story of where I am today. I was in pharmacy school, actually working on a master's in clinical research at the same time. And I had this big vision of becoming the CEO of a big corporation. That was my goal, to be a CEO of big pharma. So that was, coming out of pharmacy school, I went straight into the corporate space, and I climbed the corporate ladder super fast. I was on that fast track, got into their leadership development program, and was one of those that just was the yes woman. And, there's people and you just see them say yes to everything, and they just tackle everything with gusto just to climb the ladder. And there may be dead bodies, but they're getting it done to grow their career. And I feel not that I did anything negative to other people, except for maybe somewhat neglect my family. I found that I climbed to the top of Mount Everest. And at the age of 35, I was at the top in a high-level leadership role with a huge salary, 2 babies, 2 kids in diapers. And I was burnt out. And I look back now and I was probably suffering from adrenal fatigue, but I realized I'd climbed the wrong mountain. But I had my back up against the wall because I had this massive income. And I also had this massive college loan debt because I borrowed a lot of money for my doctorate. And I was at a crossroads because it wasn't that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And that's a huge job I just couldn't do it. I'm just not cut for it. But I didn't want to come home, but I didn't want to work for anybody else. And that was kind of a pivotal moment for me. Therein lied the introduction of, the e-commerce, online, internet-based business that I could do in the pockets of my time around my 9 to 5. And at first it was just, well, let me see if I can get these college loans paid off, because if I can do that, then maybe I can go find they call it PRN, like as needed job as a pharmacist. Maybe I can work part-time. And that's where it started. And when I quickly kind of started studying comp plans and understanding the power of true geometric progression of a compensation model, true leveraged income, true residual income, I would have knocked a brick wall over to make it happen. And that's what I did. In a year and a half, I exceeded my corporate income with my network marketing business, had my third baby, fired my boss, and came home. And it really opened my eyes to the opportunity ahead of me. Yeah. I would say that was the initial steps into my journey of entrepreneurship, starting from corporate. I think that the leadership that you learn along the way, and I led teams geographically that were dispersed across the country. And, some could say that what I do now doesn't require a college degree, and it doesn't. It doesn't require a corporate professional background. It certainly doesn't. But I also think that operationally I've been successful because I've managed large teams in corporate. And I think as a network marketer, I was successful early on because I knew how to lead teams that were geo-dispersed across the country in the first place. Right. So sometimes I'm like, oh, college is overrated. My kids don't need to go. And then I'm like, but would I be where I am right now if I didn't have those life experiences in corporate? Who knows?
Totally. In fact, this just came up on the interview I did earlier this week where, the name of this podcast is not a diss to the corporate world. Like, I certainly would not be anywhere had it not been for that amazing training ground. But I do think, to your point, it does set you up to be very successful in other endeavors, whether it's network marketing, and the leadership that comes with that. So many people find themselves as like accidental leaders, right? So like having that training ground is huge, or, going out to be your own boss. So I have a couple of follow-ups to this. One, I'm kind of curious, like, how did you get into network marketing? Because most people I think would be very nervous to even approach someone like you because of how successful you were professionally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a great question. And actually, it's one of the biggest reasons I launched my LinkedIn coaching. Because I felt like most network marketers were intimidated by people who were already successful, and knowing how much it had radically changed my life for the better, I felt really called to launch my own business and teaching other network marketers how to recruit professionals on a professional platform and do it in a very polished way that had never been presented before, so that we can really change more professionals' lives and allow them to leverage their leadership and expertise and start businesses of their own. And it's really only been presented to them in kind of a spammy way that they wouldn't take seriously, right? So it's funny that you asked that, and I'll kind of back into your question, but I'm so passionate about how this industry can change professionals' lives who have high salaries by teaching them another passive income stream that will ultimately give them choice, that I launched that business to teach them how to access that network. Now, back to your question, to me, it was someone who I trusted dearly, and she had a really high power career in corporate, and she was an HR director in corporate, and she came home on maternity leave, started growing her network marketing business while she was on leave, and really hit the ground running at what I call like a momentum time in the company, when the company was really taking off. And she was wildly successful. And when she came to me with the opportunity, I'll take you back to me standing at the top of that mountain. There's times in people's lives when their lives are disrupted and they're open. And you have to be there at the right time, right? Because I had someone the year previous approach me in the Rodan and Field space, and I balked at her because I was like, I make $250,000 a year. Like, I'm good. I don't need your little like makeup parties. I don't need, I like balked at her. Right. Yeah. A year later, when I felt like I was trapped and my back was against the wall and I was running through so many options in my head of like, how the hell do I get out of this? And someone I really trusted, who was very professional, approached me 100% bulletproof without a shadow of a doubt, knowing where she was headed, what it was going to do for her. And she wasn't there yet. Because I trusted her and because she had a lot of credibility and because I was at a moment in disruption in my life, I was open and I listened. And her vision casting and her excitement was enough to catch me at that sliver of time in my life when I was open. And I ran with it. And I think that, again, I go back to that with LinkedIn, with where we are in our economy in the last 18 months. When disruption happens, people rethink everything. So if you guys that are listening or you're in network marketing or high ticket sales where you're like coaching people around career shifts and stuff like that, if you aren't busy on that platform, like that's where people are rethinking everything. People who are really active users are like, I know I was like, where can I find a job where I'm not covering the state of Maine to Texas to Michigan to Florida with these two little babies and still make the same amount of income? I was feverishly on the platform. So that's more of an answer that you wanted, but it was someone I truly trusted. And her confidence and enthusiasm and her own background as a professional brought me in.
You reminded me of a saying that we had at Salesforce when I worked there. And it was that, there's the 3 T's in being successful: territory, talent, and timing. And talent is the least important. So timing's everything. And the other thing you said, which I just want to underscore, is the vision casting. I think there's so many of these like, hey girl messages, people sliding into the DM, no, right. It's none of that, right? It's like, what can this do for you? Vision casting, what it can do for that person. It's not about you, the person doing the outreach at all. It's how this can help them.
Right. 100%. She'll tell you, it's funny, we laugh to this day. She said, I'd never prospected up to someone as big as you. She said, I remember the conversation. I was pacing in the backyard of my house. And I remember her saying, Melissa, how much is it going to take? How much financially is it going to take for you to feel comfortable in like leaving your career? And this was like weeks into her recruiting me into the business. And I was like, I don't know, $250K. And she said on the back end where I couldn't see her face, she was like, okay, you can't see me on the podcast, but like her jaw dropped, right? And then she like picked her jaw up and with confidence, she was like, awesome. I'm excited to run with you. And the first thing she did when she got off the phone with me was she called the millionaire closest up in her upline for social validation and immediately got me on a call within that week. Right. And so she was very smart with like, okay, I've got someone who wants to go further than I've been. And I need to connect her with someone who's been there who can help me. So those of you in network marketing, don't be afraid to recruit up, but then leverage people in your organization who can help you. And I ended up making her the 300th millionaire in the company,
Oh, that's so cool.
Right?
I love that. Yep. That's awesome. Okay. So we're going to go back a little bit. I wanted to ask more about the moment of you leaving the high-powered job. So when I heard your interview on Getting Magnetic, I knew your story. I knew Sandy and Wade's story, but I nevertheless took 5 pages of notes. And there was something I triple underlined, and it was that you were out of alignment, because that's how I was feeling when I listened to this episode. So tell us, what was going on in your life that was at odds with your career that you had worked so hard for? And what was it that pushed you to jump out and leave the nest?
Well, it's interesting. The first thing I will say is that I'd already scaled my network marketing business. I'd already matched my corporate income, but I was still working full time. And I'd gotten to a point in my career, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but like I was on autopilot. Like nothing was challenging me. It was all easy. And if it wasn't easy, it was just a pain in the ass. Like my job as a medical director, just to give you a background, is I managed prima donnas. They were all MDs and PhDs who are experts in educating experts in the field, in the medical field, on novel, new indications of products coming out. So basically, like the people I led knew more about the drug that was being prescribed in the pharmaceutical industry than anyone else on the planet, and helped feed data to produce clinical trials for further indications. These people are very smart, but they also can be very difficult to lead, right? And so I, for the most part, found that it was I wasn't enjoying my job anymore, and there was a significant amount of travel involved. I covered nearly half the country, And I'll never forget, like, I never had vacation. I was in one of those roles that no one could do what I could do. And even when I was on vacation, if shit hit the fan, it didn't matter. So I was supposed to be on vacation. And there was a huge medical symposium where 2 of my PhDs were there. And one of them, Harvard trained, no less, didn't show up for some of his work and allegedly was hungover. These are like adults who are, you would think they're supposed to be the most responsible humans. I won't get into the details because I probably will get into trouble. I'm not disclosing the company. The bottom line is I'm getting phone calls from the VP about my employees, and I'm on vacation. And I realized in that phone call at that moment, as I was sitting on the front porch of the beach house, it was the 3rd year in a row as a family, I was sitting on that porch with a computer in my lap when I was supposed to be on vacation. And I was holding on to that corporate job because it was an effing blankie of security, because I was uncomfortable with being uncomfortable at that point, with depending on what I thought initially was an unstable industry. And I look back now, and the pharmaceutical industry I'd been through like 7 restructures, multiple like layers of redirection of employees and staffing. I'd laid off tons of people. People walked around in this dark cloud of worrying if it was going to be them. And the one thing that was constant in that entire 3 to 4 year period was the growth of my income in my network marketing business. And they never threatened to lay anybody off. They never threatened to take my money back. And I finally had this aha moment that, like, I'm questioning the stability of an industry that's done nothing but my income has been stable and grown, while I'm banking on this other industry, corporate, that I'm saying is safe, yet it's a slaughterhouse every single year. Like, nothing's safe. So bet on yourself, right?
So it sounds like it was a lot of almost like societal programming that you had to unwind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
I heard you say, I think it was on Getting Magnetic as well, that part of what kept you in that corporate role was ego in part. Like, how do you think that plays in addition to just like the societal norm of like, you go to college and maybe you go to graduate school, you get this great job, you get married, you have, a couple kids, you buy a house, da, 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 da. Like, how much of that, as well as the ego, played into you hanging on as long as you did?
Oh, ego played a huge part. Honestly, I had a really hard time for about 6 months. I was sitting on it. Because again, I've doctorate, master's, like high level. You sit down at Thanksgiving and people ask you what you do and you tell them you're a network marketer, like everybody scoots back, right? And so it was an ego thing, and it took me reading a book. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it right now. It was such a good book though. And The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim Ferriss, because I was in the middle of trying to juggle. My business had scaled, right? Like my network marketing business was huge, and I'm trying to manage it and this other like really big job and try to pretend like nothing's going on, So I read the book by Tim because I'm like, how do I juggle all of this? And he talked about interviewing this attorney, this high-powered attorney, who, even though the job was like sucking her soul, that for sake of her ego, she wasn't willing to pivot for fear of what others would think of her. And his whole point was, so she's just like this miserable cow standing in the rain for perception versus just living out her fucking life the way she wants to, even if it's like, being a yoga instructor or what, like fill in the blank, right? And it was the moment that I read that was the pivotal moment for me, that I was like, wow, I am living my career for other people's perception, when I know there's a life of freedom if I give it up. And who cares what other people think? And actually what ended up happening is batshit crazy gets attention. When I left and went public about it on LinkedIn, and it was like terrifying for me because I had this really like polished, like position and career. I like interviewed all kinds of people through LinkedIn. And when I left my corporate job, And I also read the book Think and Grow Rich all at the same time. And Napoleon Hill talked about you have to burn the bridge. Like there has to be no other option. And I also felt like I was playing small in my network marketing business because I had a safety net with my corporate business, right? So when I read those two books and it all came together, that's when I quit. And I'll tell you that story in a second. But when I quit, that's when I decided unapologetically, I'm going public on social about this to the most professional platform because these people deserve to know that there's polished professional people like me who can crush this business and we can change their lives. And I was terrified to do it. And I did it anyway. And it was the smartest thing I ever could have done because my business just exploded. It was to this day, my team's full of professionals.
Wow.
Full of professionals. Yeah.
And I think too, I'm just thinking of the makeup of my team in network marketing. And, I don't have like a hard number on this because as you grow, it gets hard to kind of survey and keep track of it. But I would say at least 3/4 are all working professionals.
Right. Yes.
And it sort of takes you as the trailblazer and the leader to show you can do both until you don't want to anymore. And then you can leave, hopefully. Right.
I remember looking at, one of my mentors and millionaires in the company after I went public to the professional network. And I was like, holy cow, I am getting all these leads. Like what happened? And she was like, Melissa, you owned it. Like you've been hiding behind your corporate job and like you aren't like, you're actually owning it now and people are listening because you're owning it.
Yeah. And you're giving a new and refreshing spin compared to the hey girl type of marketing. Not to keep going back to that, but.
Right. I know, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's so intriguing too, to see someone who leaves behind a $250,000 a year income to go and do this. Like, and
I'll never forget. Yeah. Well, and I'll never forget my boss's reaction. So I want your listeners to think about these two different paradigms that I went through. And the first one was when I felt like my back was against the wall and I didn't have choice. Remember in the very beginning, when my girlfriend approached me about the opportunity, I felt so strangulated with choice. And then I want you to fast forward to the moment that I decided I didn't need this job anymore. And it was the most empowering moment in my life to tell my boss, that this career was no longer serving me and that, when I went out with the baby for maternity leave, I wasn't coming back. And I'll never forget him saying to me, Melissa, unless you're just independently wealthy, and he was a very sweet guy. He treated me like his daughter, but he's like, unless you're just independently wealthy, I suggest you keep the job, you figure it out and, you can look for something, down the road different. And I was like, I guess that's the difference between your perspective and mine. I don't need this job. How many people can say that? I don't need this job, does not serve me. I do not need it. How empowering is that?
Beyond. I mean, that's kind of the conversation I had too. The day after I heard your interview with Sandy and Wade, it was like meeting with my manager one-on-one. And she's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, not good. I'm out of alignment. And, I've built up a safety net, another stream of income. It's not covering this, but it's getting close. And I know that I have the skills to spin up more income streams. So I'm going to, thank you. But, and it's been real, but I'm out of here.
Isn't that empowering?
Oh my gosh. It's like just drop the mic,
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting to that point though, one of the questions I had for you, I think part of your story that is just so relatable and so compelling. So many people want to leave their corporate jobs, but they're yoked, right? Like they've got the student loans like you did, or they have consumer debt or a mortgage or whatever it is. So what advice would you give to the person who, to use your words, has their soul being sucked out?
Yeah.
What advice do you give so that they can plot their exit and plan for that financially?
Such a great question. I would not recommend anyone just jump without a plan. I think that's financially irresponsible, right? For me, it was very strategic. So at first it was pay off debt, right? We're talking $150,000 worth of college loan debt. And so when I paid that off, and we were paying, about $1,500 a month on that debt, before I started building a network marketing business. So when I was able to wipe that debt away, that gave us an additional $1,200 a month. Right. And so then it was, we assessed like childcare, right? Like my middle child was going off to school. So preschool wasn't going to cost, he didn't have that line item anymore. Right. So it's about like making calculated decisions. And then also like, if you have a retirement date that you want to leave, if you're a listener who's in either network marketing or you have some other side business that you're working, can you build a nest egg? Can you consciously tell your money where to go so that you can create a year's worth of income on the side so that when you do quit, you sleep at night, that you've got this safety net when you're making that move. Scale your business to a place like you did where you're like, okay, this is good enough for now. Like I'm not going to go, I know where I'm headed and I'm not just going without a plan. Which is really what we did, right? Because we paid off debt and I matched my corporate income. But I didn't have a year's worth of like life expenses set aside at that point. So it kind of depends on what strategy you want to take. So I think it's just about being strategic, right?
Yeah. And just thinking through it, even somewhat. I mean, I finally just erased it off of my whiteboard that's behind the computer here, but I had my long-term goals and one was to leave corporate March 2nd, 2022. That would have been my 2-year anniversary at Google. So this happened way before I was planning, but I was just like, you know what? I mean, I've got enough of a net that I've built up. I have this side income. It's not where it needs to be for me to like fully be comfortable, but it's good enough. And I know I'll figure out the rest. So, not even having a hard plan, but like some semblance of a plan and semblance of a safety net. Otherwise you're going to sell out. You're going to freak out. You're going to get desperate and people are going to smell it and you'll repel
that's the challenge. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. You don't want to end up desperate for the next sale. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You can't need it. Right. Okay. So going back to the LinkedIn piece, so you've built a massive business with this. It's been hugely successful. Tell us about how you started this.
It was an idea. Oh my gosh. So I'm a systems girl. And I think one of the reasons I was really successful quickly in network marketing is because I built systems so they would duplicate, right? And when I went public on LinkedIn, and I think that's the thing is I was already really successful in my business because I'd already matched my corporate income. But when I went public on LinkedIn, it took my business to a whole nother level because it was just a wide open blue ocean. Like nobody else was over there talking about the income opportunity to build out a secondary income stream. And they weren't owning it with professionalism like I was. And I started bringing in all these professionals off of LinkedIn. And then I was like, okay, I can't funnel all these people back into like Facebook groups and teach them to post products because that's not how I recruited them. Right. So all of a sudden I had to rethink like my recruitment strategy is working phenomenally, but I can't funnel them into the back end of what the rest of the company and team's been doing. I have to jump out of the nest of the group of the team I was a part of and build my own systems and process. And that in itself was like going through a divorce. It was a hard thing to do because my upline did not agree with what I was doing. They thought I'd lost my mind, right? They were pissed that I wasn't, using their systems, funneling people into their things, right? Yeah. And through really great coaching, because I've always invested in coaches, like always, she was like, why don't you just do your own thing? And that was the moment I truly believe was like the big step into entrepreneurship of like, there was this fear of like, well, if I step away from these girls and do my own thing, then I've got to do it all myself. Like if I'm not using their pages and I'm not like, and that was a little terrifying, but I did. I had the confidence. I'd hired a coach. I decided to jump out of the nest and I booked myself in a really fancy, like 5-star resort for a couple days all by myself because I needed to think. I just needed to think. Yeah. And I spent days thinking and coming up with process and how I could teach other people to do what I was doing on LinkedIn and plug them in. And I learned through the wild, wild west how to create the courses. Like it was all on my own, like, you know, being very scrappy, built curriculum, built coursework. And it was for my team. It was for my network marketing team. And I came home and they started duplicating it like bananas. And at that point, my coach said, why you are on to something? Why are you only sharing this with your team? You could be selling it to like everyone who's trying to monetize and recruit on LinkedIn. And that was another terrifying moment of like, what? Me? Like sell this? Like how? Like where? I don't know how to do this. Right. And that was a life coach. And I knew the life coach wasn't the one who was going to have the know-how and the text, like the skill set to like help me get there, but she's the one that motivated me to monetize it. And that is when my very first higher level business coach came into mind. And I'd heard a lot of her podcast, and she was an online coach, and she was so business savvy. She built her own brand. I'm going to give her can I give her a shout out here?
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about. Please do.
Kayla Kraft, she built her own $1 million brand in a year. And in 1 year, she scaled her Mommy Millionaire brand to $1 million. And she inspired me, and I reached out to her and had never met her, didn't know her on Instagram, didn't know what she looked like. I didn't even know she had come originally from the same network marketing company as me. And it was like this magnetic force that like just drew me to her. I hired her, and she worked intensely with me for 6 months. She helped me take my idea and launch it. And in 19 months, we did $1 million in sales.
Wow.
So
that was a good ROI.
Yes. And I think, but the bottom line on all of that is that like, it was significant mentorship, and, you know, and she wasn't the only one, right? So like I hired her. She gave me the mindset that I was capable. She gave me the connections and started helping me connect the dots of like platforms and like how to build this out and how to get the word out, how to monetize it, how to get a podcast started, all those things. But then I realized I got some bites. My launches started going. I ended up having like a $70,000, $80,000 launch, had another one. And what I realized at that point was I need more systems in place. Kayla and I still work with her to this day, one-on-one as my mindset coach. But I was like, she has been phenomenal in helping me get this far. But now I need somebody really skilled, like on the systems back end to scale this bad boy. And so I joined another mastermind, Kelly Roche, Unstoppable Entrepreneurs. And I actually joined 2 masterminds last year. So when people look at my business and they're like, wow, you did $1 million in sales in 19 months. What I want to be clear on is I didn't do it by myself. It wasn't in a vacuum. And I invested probably $50,000 to $80,000 in 18 months in my own development to get me there. It didn't just fall into my lap, and it was a lot of hard fucking work.
And you know, something that you said, I think is just so important. I want to like triple underscore it. Investing in yourself.
Yeah.
Like you can't, I mean, unless you're just, you know, a prodigy or something, you're not going to be able to figure this out without mentors and those that have gone before helping show you the way. So if you're listening to this, go invest in a coach.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I just came back from Game Changers, which is full of 7 and 8 figure income earners. And the women on stage, even Kelly Roche, she's scaling up to 100 million a year. And she has a mindset coach. What I thought was really interesting, and you'll probably find this interesting, a lot of the members of their top tier mastermind, which is the next level from the one I'm in now, they have business psychologists. Like they work with business psychologists. Every single one of them had a mindset coach, which is very different. Some are going to disagree, but than a business coach. Yes. And I have both. Like Kayla, like has me crying and kicking pillows and working through like my childhood issues.
She made me do that too, by the way, at our coaching retreat. It's quite an experience.
Right. Whereas Kelly is like giving me like hire structures and compensation plans and how people should be paid, right? Like you need both. I don't know that most people are skilled in doing both, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think, I kind of bridge both a little bit, but I think it depends on the level you're at too. Like what you're trying to do is so niche, so specific. Like you need someone that's an expert in that. Otherwise you're going to spin your wheels.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. That's a really good call out. Okay. So tell us a little bit too about the mastermind. We touched on it briefly, but talk to us about, what it's been like building your own brand and just all of that. Cause I think a lot of people are kind of scared to do that, right? It's like, who am I to have my own brand?
And it's so much fun. Well, and I'm glad you brought this up because what we found when we launched my LinkedIn Academy, we've had about 400 clients go through the program now. And our clients getting the most success, generating lots of leads and growing and scaling their teams were like, I need more organization around this. Like that was part of it is they were like, Melissa, you're running multiple businesses. We see your A team behind you. Like you don't miss a beat with like service. And like, we feel like we're close to you, even though we're not. Like, how are you doing this operationally? So that was part of it. Right. But then also I started getting a lot of inquiries from people even outside of my academy who were like, I'm thinking of launching this thing. I'm thinking about doing this thing. And, can I get, some time with you? And I'm like, I ain't got no time unless you're paying me. That's just like, right? Like there's only so many coffee chats you're willing to give people before like time is money. I've got kids. I've got a business. And what we realized was that we could launch a mastermind at a much higher ticket price for a 9-month intensive and really teach people 3 things. Number 1, personal branding. And number 2, really how to step into your power as a CEO. And all the things. So they really get a lot of that from me. I coach a lot to personal branding as well, but I bring in my brand manager and she does a lot of the coaching around personal branding and we work through their particular brand and how it looks, how it sounds, like all those things. And then from a CEO standpoint, it's like, it's all the things that a CEO deals with, that a lot of people don't think about till they start really generating income operationally, like what you need to do as a CEO. And then the third pillar is really the operations piece. Like a lot of people have never ventured into, like for instance, Facebook and Instagram went down not too long ago when people were freaking the F out because they didn't have email lists. They didn't have a text sequence, right? So like we coach all those things in our mastermind. It's all the operational back things as an online entrepreneur that you cannot miss, that you need systems in place, whether you're in network marketing or you're an online business coach, right? So that's my operations team. So she really does a lot of coaching on the back end on Trello, how to manage boards with VAs. We coach on how to make your first hire and work your way through that. And so, yeah, it's kind of and I think the value that they get most is the collaboration together. Yes. What they hear each of them are doing. Some of them are launching podcasts. So we've coached them on how to do that. But they get hot seat coaching. They even get access to our VA agency. They're the only clients up until recently that could use our LinkedIn VA agency. But, it's been a blast. It's like a whole nother level of online entrepreneur who's like bursting at the seams to build their own brand. And they want to just pivot and go above and beyond being a network marketer, but they don't know where to get started. Does that make sense?
Totally. Also, I need to take this mastermind. So like definitely need that. I have a lot of the pieces, but part of what is so key about this is that, as you do begin to build your own brand and you start to really, level up and do things that you never thought that you could, you really need to find that tribe that's going to that place with you because it can feel a bit lonely. So I think that's one of the biggest value adds that you're bringing.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. I just posted this in my stories like 2 days ago. And, we talk about how, I significantly grew my income in 18, 19 months. And it was not just my coaches, even though my coaches have been amazing. I joined 2 masterminds, and I will never forget the very first day of my first day in a mastermind. One of the girls in my group had 100K day wow. when I came in. Gosh. And I was like, what? And I had 2 choices. I could be intimidated and like put my tail between my legs, or I could be overwhelmingly inspired and pull a chair up and like ask her a million questions and how she did it and how I could give back. Let me coach your community on LinkedIn and you teach me how, XYZ, right? So it immediately, these masterminds were instant networking. I had a lot of people from my previous network marketing company ask, how did you scale that business so fast? I joined masterminds. I was connected to people and I could bring value to their networks. Their networks could bring value to me, but I also up-leveled sorry about that. Re-record that. I up-leveled who I was spending my time with. And it totally changed my perspective on what I was capable of, because of the people I was surrounding myself with. As an online entrepreneur, if you're sitting at home and it feels hard and you're lonely, think about investing in a community who's going where you want to go, right?
I think having other people that are going in the same direction that you're going is so crucial. Like we've talked about Sandy and Wade so many times on this episode, right? Because they've played such a critical role in my journey. And I met Sandy actually through the LinkedIn Academy at the same time that our mutual friend introduced us. And, I got to give Sandy a shout out and credit where credit's due. Having a friend like her who is aspiring as much as I am and motivated, like it has done so much to just show me like, I'm not a weirdo. Totally. This is possible, right. And having like a pace partner, so to speak.
Oh my gosh. That's exactly what the women say in our mastermind, is that like, they just propel each other. And that's the thing, like you have wall kicking moments and we have touch-ins. So we actually have coaching calls every week and they get intensive one-on-ones with me. But what I find is that in every week, somebody's having a really great week and somebody's having a really shitty week. Right. Yeah. And being in a group where someone's winning, it inspires you even when you're having a bad day. And then when you come and you feel a block, you feel stuck, your community can help you and reframe and say, you're not stuck. You're just at a pause point until you've been given more information to move forward. Right. Yeah. And so I just feel like being in masterminds, you can take quantum leaps in where you're headed through networking. I think about right now in my collaboration with unstoppable entrepreneurs. They're 7 and 8 figure income earners in there. And the woman who runs the community is asking me to do LinkedIn coaching next month. Wow. And you talk about lead generation for your business. Yeah. So like it's worth the investment just to be networked, right?
Such a great point. So to kind of summarize the last few points. So find a community that's going to fuel and push you. Invest in yourself, whether it's coaching, mastermind, or someone who is an operational expert in whatever you're trying to do. And then, really finding a way to give back and add value to those that are mentoring you too. I think so often people being mentored feel like they have nothing to bring to the table when that's never the case. There's always value that you can add too.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. If you're like on a shoestring budget, that's what I would discuss is how can you, if you're first getting started as an entrepreneur, how can you trade off with some of your peers? When I first launched my very first LinkedIn method, it was called LinkedIn Bootcamp. It was $100 for the class. Okay. I made $1,200 in my first launch. Okay. And I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together for that new business. And I'd made really good friends at a Mommy Millionaire event. And she was a professional photographer and we traded off. She did a whole like photo series for me. And she got full access to my next program, which we scaled the price up to like $700 at that point, right? So it's like, if you don't have the money to invest, how can you trade off? How can you give value to someone and get value, right? Don't just ask for someone's time without offering to give something back.
Yeah, such a great point. So before we wrap up, I have to tell you something. I think you know this, but you might not. I actually need to credit you with the name of the podcast. Oh, because you mentioned the phrase corporate dropout in a coaching session that we had, and I just couldn't unhear it. And so actually I was looking back through the notes that I took of your interview with Sandy and Wade. And in the notes, it was like business idea, interview fellow corporate dropouts on a podcast. Now here we are. It's just coming full circle and it's super
I
cool.
love that. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If you go to my LinkedIn handle, my headline is corporate dropout. So we're like sisters from another mother.
I love it. Well, yeah. Thank you for coming up with that amazing branding that I took and ran with. So
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. So good. We're going to have to get you on my podcast.
Oh, I would love it. And actually, speaking of that, I realized I didn't mention that in your intro. So you have an amazing podcast too, which, well, and again, coming full circle, I had Dr. Valerie Rain on the show not that long ago. I know about her because of you. You said, listen to this interview she did with me, which has just, again, been like a life-changing type of thing. But tell us about your podcast. Tell us where people can find and connect with you and all of that great stuff.
Yeah, it's actually Burnout to All Out. And, you know, it's interesting. It's geared it's fairly geared towards your similar audience. So my whole feature is people who've been burned out in their 9 to 5 and have shifted to betting on themselves and starting their own businesses. Which again, being in this mastermind I'm in, who are all online entrepreneurs, has been a Pandora's box of networking to bring people in and interview. It was just having left corporate myself, it's just been my mission to like interview as many people as possible who've really crushed their own businesses to inspire more people to do it themselves. So not only do we, so I spend a series of interviews, constantly interviewing people who've bet on themselves and are now crushing their own businesses. But then obviously I have my own set of podcasts I'm constantly recording on life hacks, tips, tricks in business management, life, mom, all the things. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll link in the show notes too, where people can find you on LinkedIn, on social media. We'll link your website with the course. If you take any of Melissa's programs, whether it's LinkedIn Academy, the Mastermind, be sure to tell them I sent you. And again, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited for all that you've done and like where you're headed. Just so cool. So excited for you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I honestly don't think I'd be here had it not been for you and meeting you at a very critical point. So just feeling very grateful.
Yay.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If today's episode added value to your life in some way, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with someone who needs this. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram and hear how the show has inspired you. So tag me or slide into the DMs. Find me at Corporate Dropout Official or Alacia Citro. That's ALESSIACITRO and 2 underscores. Until next time, remember that you're a badass. Stay focused, stay hungry, and dare to drop out.